Are you ready to uncover the truth about Russia's biggest enemies in 2025?
Il qual tensione la tua ticola? Olo.
Why decades-old friendships turned into rivalries? Which countries have challenged Russia's power from history to the present day, from battlefield confrontations to political wars? This video reveals the top 10 countries that are now Russia's most dangerous adversaries. Some might shock you, others you saw it coming. Did you know that even former allies now stand in strong opposition to Moscow's global agenda? Make sure to like, subscribe, and watch till the end, because this video dives deep into the events, alliances, betrayals, and battles that made these nations Russia's worst enemies in 2025. Let's get started with number 10, Poland. Why does Poland, a former Soviet satellite, hate Russia so much? Did you know Poland has one of the strongest anti-Russian sentiments in Europe? It all began during World War II when the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics invaded Poland in 1939. Then came the Cain Massacre, where over 22,000 Polish officers were murdered by Soviet forces. Poland never forgot. Fast forward to the Cold War. Poland suffered under Soviet influence for decades. When the Iron Curtain fell in 1989, Poland raced westward, joining NATO in 1999 and the EU in 2004. Every move Poland made since then has been to escape Russian control, and Moscow sees this as betrayal. When Russia invaded Ukraine in 2014 and again in 2022, Poland responded with full force. Militarily, politically, and emotionally, it became one of Ukraine's strongest supporters, sending tanks, fighter jets, and accepting over 5 million refugees. Poland even hosted U.S. military bases and NATO command centers, making it a frontline state against Russian expansion. In 2024 and 2025, Poland doubled its defense spending, fortified its eastern border, and signed bilateral security pacts with the U.S., UK, and Germany. Russian media calls Poland the aggressor, while Polish leaders warn against Russian imperialism. Poland is no longer the victim. It's the defender of Eastern Europe. Its bitter history, national pride, and forward military stances have made it one of Russia's fiercest enemies. In 2025, number 9, Germany. Germany once relied heavily on Russian gas. Over 50% of its energy imports came from Russia before 2022. But after the invasion of Ukraine and the sabotage of the Nord Stream pipelines, Germany shifted drastically. The once strong economic partner has now turned into a cautious and increasingly confrontational rival of Moscow. Germany has frozen multi-billion-dollar energy projects, including Nord Stream 1-2, and banned most imports from Russia. It has also sent Leopard tanks, air defense systems, and other advanced weaponry to Ukraine, breaking decades-long policies of non-involvement in conflicts. In 2025, Germany is leading European efforts to cut Russia off diplomatically and economically. It supports full EU embargo sanctions against 100 of Russian entities and the rebuilding of Ukraine's infrastructure. Berlin also calls for war crime trials against Russian officials. Historically, the Germany-Russia relationship has been tense and unpredictable. From World War II enemies to Cold War adversaries, today, Germany's change in policy marks a significant shift in European geopolitics. Putin has accused Germany of becoming a tool of American interests, while German politicians now view Russia as an imperial aggressor. Germany is also increasing its military spending to over 2% of GDP, modernizing its army to prepare for potential Eastern threats. Number 8, Norway. Why would a quiet, oil-rich country like Norway become Russia's enemy? Did you know that Norway now plays a key role in NATO's northern strategy to contain Russia in the Arctic? In the North Atlantic, this once peaceful neighbor has turned into a serious obstacle for Russian expansion. During the Cold War, Norway kept a delicate balance, being in NATO but avoiding direct provocation. But after Russia's 2022 invasion of Ukraine, things changed dramatically. Norway ramped up military readiness, built new radar and surveillance bases, and reopened Cold War-era military facilities. Why is the Arctic so important? Because as the ice melts, new sea routes open, along with massive oil and gas reserves. Russia wants control, but Norway, backed by the US and NATO, is standing in the way. In 2023-2025 joint military drills between Norway, the US, and the UK increased near the Russian border, alarming Moscow. Russian submarines and aircraft have frequently violated Norwegian air and sea space, Norway responded by boosting its intelligence operations, sharing sensitive data with NATO. In 2025, Norway also expelled several Russian diplomats suspected of espionage. Russia now labels Norway a NATO spearhead in the north. The cold Arctic has become a fiery front line, and Norway is no longer neutral. From oil fields to icy waters, from diplomacy to defense, Norway now stands firm against Russia's Arctic ambitions. Number 7. France. Why is France, the land of wine and romance, seen as a hostile enemy by Russia? Did you know France has led many EU missions to counter Russian influence in Africa, the Middle East, and Europe itself? Historically, Russia and France had a love-hate relationship. From alliances in World War I to Cold War rivalries, the two never truly trusted each other. The breaking point came in 2022 when Emmanuel Macron, once trying to mediate with Putin, became one of the loudest voices supporting Ukraine. France sent long-range artillery, armored vehicles, and intelligence support. By 2024, France declared that Russian aggression cannot go unpunished. Why? Because Russia was also trying to kick France out of influence zones in Mali, Niger, and Central Africa, regions long dominated by French forces. Then came 2025. France, still a nuclear power, pushed hard within the EU for even tighter sanctions, blocking Russian oil, gas, and banking systems. France's intelligence services exposed Russian spies and digital propaganda campaigns across Europe. Russia retaliated with cyber attacks and massive disinformation campaigns targeting French elections. Today, France leads Europe's military modernization and European strategic autonomy, aimed squarely at countering Russia. Moscow views France as a European hawk in disguise, an enemy masquerading as a peacemaker. From diplomacy to direct confrontation, France's stance has shifted. Russia sees it not just as a rival, but as a threat to its global influence and empire. It won't forget number 6. Canada? Why would peaceful Canada ever be Russia's enemy? Did you know that beneath Canada's calm image lies a fierce opponent of Russian ambitions? Canada has long stood firm against Russian aggression, especially since the Cold War. But what really intensified the hostility in 2014, when Russia invaded Crimea? Canada immediately condemned the act and imposed strict sanctions. Why? Because Canada is home to one of the largest Ukrainian populations outside Ukraine, and their voices became impossible for Ottawa to ignore. As tensions in the Arctic intensified, Canada and Russia found themselves battling for control over polar territory. Why the Arctic? Because it holds billions of dollars worth of oil and gas resources. Both countries desperately want. Canada joined hands with NATO and the US to counter Russian military expansion in the Arctic, making this cold region a hotbed of geopolitical tension in 2022 and beyond. After Russia's full-scale invasion of Ukraine, Canada sent millions of dollars in aid, arms, and military training to Ukraine. Russian media and leaders now label Canada as a Western puppet and an enemy state. In 2024 and 2025, Canada increased intelligence cooperation with the US and NATO, exposing Russian cyber attacks and expelling Russian diplomats accused of espionage. From a peaceful partner to a silent but strong enemy, Canada now stands firmly against Russia, not with words, but with weapons, alliances, and unwavering resistance. Number 5. Sweden? Why did neutral Sweden suddenly turn into an enemy of Russia? Did you know that Sweden, known for its peaceful diplomacy, joined NATO in 2023? That single decision changed everything for over 200 years. Sweden avoided military alliances, but when Russia invaded Ukraine, everything changed. Sweden saw what happened to small, unprotected countries and decided neutrality was no longer an option. Sweden's shift shocked Russia. Moscow saw Sweden's NATO membership as a direct threat to its northwest border. Why? Because Sweden controls access to the Baltic Sea, and Russia fears being encircled by NATO powers. The island of Gotland, Sweden's Baltic fortress, is now a strategic NATO military base. Just a few hundred kilometers from Russian territory, the two nations have clashed in cyberspace as well. In 2024, Swedish authorities accused Russian operatives of cyber attacks on critical infrastructure and disinformation campaigns to influence Swedish elections. Russian officials denied it, but the digital war had already begun. By 2025, Sweden has sent advanced defense systems and training missions to Ukraine. Moscow has labeled Sweden an enemy proxy of NATO, adding it to its list of hostile nations. Military drills in the Baltic intensified, and both sides now prepare for potential conflict, from neutrality to NATO, from diplomacy to defense. Sweden's transformation shocked the world, but to Russia, it was a declaration of allegiance to the West and a betrayal. Number 4. United Kingdom. The United Kingdom has long stood as one of Russia's most vocal and proactive critics. Their hostile relationship intensified after the poisoning of Russian ex-viceroy Sakharov in 2018 in Salisbury, an act blamed on Russian agents. This event reopened deep mistrust, evoking Cold War-style tensions.
The UK expelled diplomats, imposed sanctions, and led a European campaign to punish Russia. Post-Brexit, the UK became even more aggressive in asserting itself globally, especially in security matters. It has sent advanced weapons to Ukraine, trained Ukrainian forces, and increased military presence in Eastern Europe. In 2025, it is one of the top contributors to NATO's defense initiatives against Russia. Britain's media and politicians consistently condemn Russian actions, labeling Russia as a global threat. British intelligence agencies like MI6 are deeply involved in monitoring Russian cyber threats and disinformation campaigns. Moreover, London's financial system has frozen Russian oligarchs, assets, and properties, hitting Putin's inner circle hard. The UK Parliament frequently debates increasing pressure on Moscow, calling it a moral obligation to stand against tyranny. Russia now sees the UK not just as a former empire, but as a cunning opponent wielding soft power, media influence, and intelligence operations to undermine its global standing. Number 3. United States. Though the Soviet Union collapsed in 1991, the ideological battle between Russia and the United States never truly ended. What began as the Cold War has now evolved into a global power rivalry. The US has consistently opposed Russian ambitions, from supporting NATO's eastward expansion to backing anti-Russian sanctions, especially after the Crimea annexation and the invasion of Ukraine. Since 2014, the US has sanctioned 100 of Russian companies and individuals. In 2022, after the Ukraine war escalated, America provided over $100 billion in military and economic aid to Ukraine. The US is the primary driver behind NATO's unity against Moscow in 2025. Washington continues to deploy more troops and weapons to Eastern Europe, directly threatening Russia's military-dominant cyber warfare. Propaganda battles and espionage have intensified between the two nations. Accusations of election meddling, cyber attacks on critical infrastructure, and space militarization have fueled mistrust. The US also leads the global charge in isolating Russia from international systems like Society for Worldwide Interbank, Financial Telecommunication, and the World Bank. Russia sees the US as the mastermind of its containment, while the US views Russia as a threat to democracy and global order. Their competition now spans continents from the Arctic to Africa. Number 2. Lithuania. Small but loud. Lithuania has become one of the fiercest critics of Russia in Europe. Lithuania's trauma from Soviet occupation is deep. Independence came in 1990, and ever since it has warned the West about Russian threats. In 2022-2025, Lithuania became a vocal supporter of Ukraine, supplying arms, training soldiers, and lobbying EU and NATO for tougher actions. Lithuania also blocked the transit of sanctioned Russian goods to Kaliningrad, a move that sparked outrage in Moscow. Russian officials threatened military retaliation, and Lithuania responded by increasing NATO presence on its soil. Diplomatic ties were downgraded, embassies nearly empty. Lithuania also hosted Belarusian and Russian opposition activists, another red flag to the Kremlin. In 2024, Lithuanian intelligence stopped multiple Russian spy attempts, escalating security tensions. Russia accuses Lithuania of being a U.S. proxy and destabilizing regional peace. By 2025, Lithuania is under constant cyber attack threats and labeled a Russian-phobic extremist state in Russian media. Number 1. Ukraine, from neighbors to nemesis. Ukraine and Russia's relationship is one of the most tragic transformations in recent history. Before 2014, Ukraine and Russia had cultural ties, shared history, and deep economic cooperation, but everything changed with the 2014 annexation of Crimea by Russia. That move shattered Ukraine's trust and shifted the balance of Eastern Europe. The ongoing war since 2022, triggered by Russia's full-scale invasion, has turned Ukraine into Russia's most active battle. Ukraine has received billions in aid from NATO and Western countries, solidifying its alliance against Russia. The destruction of cities like Mariupol, Bakhmut and Kharkiv, combined with the loss of over 500,000 lives, has deepened the hatred. Ukraine now seeks full NATO membership, directly opposing Russian interests with anti-Russian laws, language bans, and removal of Soviet-era symbols. Ukraine has openly rejected its Russian ties in 2025. Ukraine is more unified, fiercely patriotic, and openly defiant of Russia. This war has redefined Ukraine's identity not as Russia's brother but as its boldest enemy. The enmity runs deeper than borders. Now it's emotional, historical, and generational, from Cold War scars to present-day conflicts. These 10 countries have now become Russia's most powerful enemies. In 2025, history, geopolitics, and warfare have all played a role. If you found this video eye-opening, don't forget to like, subscribe, and comment your thoughts below. Thanks for watching.